Good morning. Welcome to Just the Facts, and thanks for tuning in today. I have in the studio this morning Art Johnston, who is currently the 4th District School Board member, running for the office for his 3rd time.
Hi, Marcy.
Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me again.
Glad to have you in here, Art. Art, I think you're very brave wanting to go for another 4-year term. And so I guess we'll start out by telling the viewers why is it that you feel you want to continue as a school board member?
We have a lot of challenges, we know, in the district. You've asked me about those before. We have financial challenges. We have inept financial advice. We have enrollment declines because of that. We have achievement gaps. But being a school board member is very difficult. We have no staff. We have no access to information. And it has taken a long time to understand how the school board works, or how this school works, how schools work in Minnesota. There's been no help from the superintendent. There's been negative help. They basically thwart everything that a school board member does, particularly if they don't always have some agreement. If you ask questions, you get shut off. And so in this 8 years, I've learned a lot of information about the budget. I've learned how our debts are structured. I've learned how poor our education system is in many areas. We're good in some areas, but we're also poor. So we have these challenges, serious challenges, as we've always had. But I've got the knowledge now. When new people come in, it's going to take you 4 years to even learn anything about it because information is so parsed out. I think it's really important for me to run again because I do have the information. My background as a structural engineer, I think, is very important for what I do because we're talking about budget, we're talking about contract administration. Remember, Marcy, we do not run the schools. We do not do day-to-day operations in the school. We are the conduit from the community to the school. And we are not the school. And I think that it's important to have people, particularly people who have expertise in finance, expertise in construction, expertise in energy management, like myself, to be in there. And it's not enough, for example, to be some of my opponents literally have said they think what the school needs is cheerleaders. And we don't need cheerleaders, we need people that have knowledge. We want to work with people. We don't need collaboration as much as we need information and knowledge. And that information and knowledge has been denied us. And I've fought for information tooth and nail, and I've got it now. And I think that we have made progress the last 2 years. We've passed resolutions to reassess our fund, or our debt structures, our debt repayment structures. Just 2 months ago, we passed another resolution, my resolution, to relook at money that is going away from our Western schools and making sure that money stays where it's needed. We have equity problems in our schools. It's another one of the problems we've got.
Excuse me a minute.
Yeah.
You actually had a resolution and it passed?
Well, I say the last 2 years I've had actually a lot of resolutions.
But you actually got one passed, is what I'm saying.
Well, you seem surprised at that. I don't think that should. I don't think that. I mean, the school board now has changed. 2 years ago, we got rid of 3 very nasty school board members that did nothing, but for 4 years, nothing but literally attacked me. All you got to do is look at some of the YouTube things, and you can see people were making faces, sticking out their tongues. I mean, go on and on. I mean, this is really embarrassment for adults. And it was not me. This was them. If you look at this, some people like to say I'm the blame. No, it's not. Look at the videos. You know who was to blame. I never ridicule people. Do I ask questions? Absolutely. That's my job. So, we have that information now, and it's important, I think, for me to be elected and continue what we've done for the last 2 years. The last 2 years shows we've finally been functioning as a board. Has it been perfect? No. We're not able to sell Central for $14 million. We renewed the superintendent's contract with the golden parachute in, just an absolutely poor contract, probably uniquely poor in the state of Minnesota. And so some things we have not been successful, but the things we have been successful, we can now get agenda items put on. Our videos now are available. They're live streamed. That's something that I've been asking for years. Do we have a long way to go? Yes, but we have these unanimous decisions of important things like restructuring our debt, getting money back to the Western schools which generated. And I'm kind of excited about serving another 4 years and working with people that I think actually care about the solving these challenges that we have. I obviously have the energy to do it. I have the enthusiasm, and I'm a big promoter of public schools, and to me, failure is not an option. And we have these challenges. We have to meet these challenges, and by just putting our head in the sand is not an answer. We have to challenge them. We have to use our brains. The whole board is there to function as a board, not to function as a cheerleader squad.
And I can't agree with you more. The only reason I said you actually got something passed because I used to film it, you know that, and all I saw was rejection of everything that you ever tried to do. So, I mean, I'm excited that you've got a resolution passed. To me, that's monumental. And
I've got many resolutions passed.
Well,
and,
good.
Yeah,
glad to hear that.
And
that's
I would
good.
like to, some of the naysayers out there that think that we're just supposed to be cheerleaders.
Well,
I would suggest they look at the meetings, particularly for the last 2 years, and if you think that Iowa was a problem from the years before that, look at these things, and you'll see the ugliness of the school board.
I saw.
And we've made amazing progress. And I did survive the actual sanctity of elections. I mean, there was actually people that wanted to overturn elections by removing me. What? For bringing up, when did this happen? It happened after I've asked questions about $12 million in change orders that the public was never informed of. $12 million. It was 2 weeks after that column was published that they went after me just viciously. They being the superintendent and at the time the majority of the school board. And again, there's only one of those people left on the board now, and that's too bad that she's still there because it's very ugly, but it's certainly better to have one than to have 5 on it.
Well, I know there is a problem in the western part, the western part of the city. We have kids that they get a diploma, but they aren't qualified to really get a good job, in the graduation disparity between one side of the city and the other is large. Where do you think would be a place to seek some extra funding, since we've obviously got a major problem with the indebtedness? You can't expect to get more money into those coffers when the students are leaving and taking about $10,000+ with them. So where do you see as a possibility of being able to get some of that funding to make sure those programs are there for those kids on the western side as well as the eastern side? But have you got some ideas that you've been looking into or you are aware of that can be possibilities?
Well, I'm going to say the one that I've been trying to promote ever since actually when I became aware of it, again now about 6 years ago, was we have to refinance our debts. Now, we keep hearing the same broken record from the superintendent and the new corporate financial officer that there's nothing we can do. We are locked into this. Well, we have to acknowledge, first of all, who got us in that problem. And they're seeking advice from the exact same people that gave us that advice that has just been horrible on the classrooms. And we pulled $39 million out of the classrooms in the last 6 years to pay for these debts. $39 million. And the administration finally is admitting that. And of course now they say, well, gee, there's nothing we can do about it. Well, I've talked to financial advisors, and we did pass a motion for the administration to to reassess that. No, I haven't seen much action because why? They have the same broken record where there's nothing we can do. But who have they done? They've talked to the same lawyers that set this up. They've talked to the same financial analysts that set this up. And they have the exact same broken record. And they won't not even acknowledge that right now we're paying, even according to their own figures, say we're pulling about $3.5 million a year out of the classrooms. But overall, we're paying about $25 million, whereas that is being paid by local taxation. If we had decent interest rates, I suspect that we're paying the highest interest rates on our debts of any school in the state of Minnesota. And if we were paying decent interest rates, normal interest rates, we'd be saving at least $8 million a year on interest, just on interest.
That's a lot of money.
If we had, interest rates now are extremely low. We're paying an effective rate of close to 5%, which is really outrageous when it comes to but municipal school type bonds. There's other debts that are being sold, close to 3%. And, if some lawyers made it that it was impossible for us to refinance, well, I would like to find out who's responsible for that, and certainly make sure that we never hire them again. And secondly, I'd like to get some credible second opinions of people that do not have their career invested in giving this school district, this town, extremely poor legal and financial advice. And the superintendent is among the worst. He did that the last debt payments we had was sponsored by advocated by the superintendent. So he is exactly culpable of this. So, okay, we got sidetracked. You asked, what else? Okay, what else can we do to get some of the funding that we need back to, say, Denfeld? That's a generic thing, and this would help all of us out. If we could help $3 million on our general fund, that would be amazing. Remember, we have that much deficit. If we could save $8 million a year in reducing the tax burden that we put on people, that would be an amazingly good thing for the people of Duluth. Okay, other issues that we could do, things that I was advocating for, and I'm still advocating for, is that we should be selling Central High School property for the highest value. As you probably know, we had one offer for $10 million that fell through because a person thought there was too much expenses involved in reprogramming that property. Then a year ago, a little over a year ago now, we had an offer of $14.2 million. That was turned down. Why? Because the teachers union went rabid about charter schools. They hate charter schools, literally. You should see some of the emails that I've got, all from teachers. They were scared to death that we were going to give this property to the charter schools and they may do better than us. Well, I wish we didn't have charter schools, but I wanted to take their money. If they're willing to give us $14 million, we should have taken that $14 million. We can it was a program called Grow Your Own. It's taking our staff and our students and making them teachers. We have a problem with not being able to get and retain teachers of color, or staff of color. So that is a way to take that. We could literally, with $14 million, say we take only $1 million of that dollars. That would be enough to send 20 kids to school, get their teaching degree, and come back and teach for 4 years. That's how much. $14 million, some people laugh at and say, well, that's not nothing. We have a $100 million budget. $14 million is a lot. That is enough to send 20 kids to school to get their teaching degree, with the condition, of course, that they're going to come back and teach with us, say, for 4 years. Those are things that could be negotiated about. We have what's called Pathway to Teaching right now. It's a program we're trying to implement, but that's only it's not taking any money and giving those kids to get money to go to school. Money to go to school is expensive. And so that's one thing that we could do, that we could actually help us out. Long-term helping out the achievement gap would be fantastic. It would be a use of that money. Another use for that money would be something we've talked about. This was another 4-3 split on the board, would be to take that money and bring back 7 period days. 7 period days is probably the biggest thing that we hear that is a hindrance that keeps students from being able to schedule classes. They've only got 6 classes instead of 7. They need certain classes to be able to be competitive in college readiness, and just to learn things in life, whatever it be, whether it be auto mechanics or the fab lab, or being an orchestra. And if we don't have those alternatives to be able to juggle their classes, it has been a hindrance. You just have to talk to teachers in Denfeld to see what an impact this is having. So that's another thing. There's a lot of money available to us if we spent our money, if we had prioritized our money. And if we sold the property that we have and took that money and invested it in our school. Investing in sending kids to school, some people say, oh, we can't pay kids to go to school. Why not? If we can take that money, it would be a fantastic investment, because it's going to allow some of our kids of color to come back and be teachers. It's going to allow them to go through. So that's one way we can do it. If we can take it, we can bring back 7 period days. We're going to start bringing back students, and that's going to help a lot. So those are just 2 simple things that we can do. One more thing that we could do is this is the motion that passed unanimously by the board here 2 months ago, which was my motion, was we have money from the state. It's called COMPED money, comprehensive education money, or called COMPED. And that's money, special money that is allocated to schools based on the amount of free and reduced lunch. Now, we have a demographic difference between East Duluth and West Duluth. Everybody knows that. We have more working class people in West Duluth, and we don't have as many people on the higher income levels as we do in East Duluth. And consequently, Denfeld, as well as all our schools, Lincoln Park, Stoll, Lower MacArthur, gets extra money from the state called COMPED money. It amounts to a lot. It amounts to somewhere in a few $1 million altogether. And it turns out, and thanks to some of the parents and the students group in Denfeld, or the parents and the teacher group in Denfeld that have been working on this, we finally, and thanks to Lana Oswald, who finally got budget analysis for each school, something I've been asking about for years, we're finally getting some data. And we found out that all this COMPED money, which is going to these Western schools, is not staying in those Western schools. It's going to the Eastern schools. And that seems like a real no-brainer. The excuses given by the administration as well, I don't know what the excuses are. That seems really lame. We have higher demands in the Western schools. We have higher needs because of our demographics. And our schools must deal with things like free and reduced lunch. We have more special ed people in Denfeld than our Western schools, and we need money to take care of that. And the teachers have been begging for that for a long time. And this is something that we're going to I'm very confident that the Denfeld parents and the Denfeld teachers are going to be real adamant. They come and talk to us every month. We have to get this. Remember how upset the people were on the mulch. They kept at it, and we finally got it. The Denfeld people are doing everything absolutely right. They're coming to the board, they're talking to the board, and they're insisting, they're following up to see the board pass this resolution. Now, it's up to the administration to carry it out.
Well,
they have to keep pushing. We as a board have to keep pushing the administration. If we're going to elect somebody who thinks they should only be cheerleaders to the superintendent, how are they going to push implementing change? There is no change if you're a cheerleader. We have to implement change.
Well, I'm going to recall a couple of things you said here. I was in the boardroom when I heard Gronseth, the superintendent, say, well, the money doesn't have to stay at the Western schools. It can be moved around. That was his reasoning for not keeping more money on the Western side. I recall that very clearly. Now, going back to the parents and the teachers at one of the very last meetings, I don't know if it was the second to the last or the last meeting, the boardroom was full of parents, teachers, and students from the Western School District asking to have a principal stay at Lowell who was being, or excuse me, Laura MacArthur, who was being moved out to the Stowe School, and they weren't listened to. I don't think they were listened to about the issue on the money either. I was there at that meeting as well. And so it seems that one side of this community, and this was part of their campaign, there's going to be equity on both ends, you know, from east to west. I've never seen that equity. I've never seen it. And you know what? When I was growing up, the western side of which I lived in, that was always your working class. That's where the factories and whatnot were when I was growing up. So it's always been that way. It hasn't changed a bit. But we certainly got as good of an education in the western section, Lincoln, Ensign, and then Denfeld. We got as good of an education as they got in the eastern schools. We didn't know that there was such an unequal situation going on because the money was spent equally. So we had all of the books and all of the teachers, and we had good teachers that made us learn. I'm so thankful for that. So what is the problem? You know, you really wonder who's scratching whose back and why the decisions are being made so unequally. And a cheerleader, I like your terminology, a cheerleader is useless. If you want to cheerlead the person that's doing the work, great. But don't get on the board and start cheerleading because I've seen too much of that cheerleading going on. That's why what's been going on has allowed to be gone on as long as it has been. And I appreciate the fact that you have been willing to stick your neck out there and get it bit off more than once. And that's what we need. We need people like you to continue to bring the issues forward and ask the questions, which of course they don't want to answer.
Well, I want to emphasize that the cheerleader terminology was not my terminology. That's my opponent's terminology. They literally have said that in 2 public forums now, that we need more cheerleading.
Oh.
This is not my terminology. This is a direct quote from them.
Oh, how interesting. Okay.
To go back on your things about the getting the money back to where it should be staying. The superintendent was very much opposed to that, but that is one of the things that we got unanimous vote on. So it's exciting to see that the board, even the normal 4-3, we had these 4 people that normally vote against, that vote to be cheerleaders for the superintendent, actually voted against the superintendent, and he was very clear about that. We had a thing last month, I don't want to go into this now, we had a motion to table a change order based on this mulch. Don't want to go into details, but that was passed by a 4-3 majority as well. And so we have some of the people that are usually support the superintendent have been more and more coming over, looking at we have to have some accountability. We want to know what's going on with our schools. We want to have some financial accountability. So, it's just kind of exciting to see some of that. But when we look at, we have a lot of ways to go yet. And again, I'm up for the challenge. This is I'll say I won't say it's really fun, but it's something you have to do as a citizen. You have to look at this. Most schools, I go and talk to many schools around the state and talk to many school boards around the state. And when we tell people that we have the enormous decline in enrollment we've had, the enormous financial challenges we've had, the inept financial management that we've had, the achievement gap. Our achievement gap is, I'll use the graduation rates as one of the worst in the state, and as everybody knows now, thanks to NPR, Minnesota has one of the worst achievement gaps in the country.
Oh my goodness.
And we have one of the worst in the state. If all those things were there, people would be saying, what is your administration doing? Why aren't you getting new administration? Now, I voted against renewing the superintendent's contract. That was a 4-3 vote. But I think that we have to look at the reality. Remember, we as school board members, we do not run the schools.
Right.
We go to meetings. We are denied information. Literally, some people, the candidates that are saying they want to be cheerleaders, that's what the superintendent wants them to be too. They don't want somebody asking questions. They don't want somebody to say, hey, maybe there's a better way to do this, and maybe we could solve some of these problems rather than keep talking about this forever. So I think the responsibility goes back. Remember, one of the things as school board members, what do? We hire the superintendent. And I think it's important that we set goals for the superintendent. Believe it or not, Marcia, there has been no goal set by the superintendent by this school board. That's one of the things I've not been able to get through yet. I think we clearly will. If I get reelected, there will be goals for the superintendent. There will be goals for the school.
Yeah,
and one of those goals is, one, we're going to solve our financial problems. One, we're going to solve the public relations problem that we have. All you have to do is talk to people. And I go door to door. I talk to a lot of people. People call me up on the phone. The number one complaint they have is that people do not listen to them. There's arrogance there. And we can see it if the school board if the school administration treats the school board members like cheerleaders, which they do. That's a problem. We are the conduit from the community to the school. We should be given information when we want it. And that goes back to who is responsible for the lack of it? The superintendent.
I agree.
That is what we do. And that has to be talked about by the city. And thank you, Marcia, for allowing me. We've had some forums. As you know, the forums in Duluth are, sorry, Duluth media, but they're pathetic. Nobody asks the tough questions. Nobody asks what you really want to do. Everybody asks things like, what are the three issues? Well, everybody copies me now. The three biggest issues are school is budget, declining enrollment, and achievement gap. I've been saying that for ever since I got elected 8 years ago. Now even all the other candidates are saying that. Those are what they've got is they're saying the way to solve it is by being a cheerleader. My thing is we have to solve it by putting accountability onto the people that this is responsible for, which is the superintendent.
Well, when I elect somebody to hold an office, I expect accountability, just like in my elected office, people want accountability from me. We just have a couple of minutes to wrap it up, Art. I think you've stated very clearly what the problems are that you're facing and that you're willing to get in there and do the best you can to alleviate some of these problems and stop having the bleed out of these students who are taking the money with them to go someplace else. I mean, the opposition is already there. If they were to buy that property and turn it into a school, it would mean we wouldn't have to spend money to tear down part of that property so somebody would look at it and buy it. And that's a reality. We were given a lie when the Red Plan walked into town. We were given so many lies that we'll sell all these buildings and help pay down the debt. And we have gained very little back from those buildings. And now we're going to put in more money into Rockridge for a remake of that building. And so I think your ideas are great, and I'm glad to see that you're willing to run again and do the best you can to alleviate some of these problems and hold the superintendent accountable, because I think he has one of the highest paid salaries in the state of Minnesota, if I'm not correct with the information I've checked up on. So he's sitting pretty, and he doesn't really have to be accountable to anybody. He has job security, and he's just fine, but he needs to be held accountable. And I hope that you're successful and that we'll be looking after November 5th, I believe it is.
November 7th is
November
election.
7th, thank you.
First Tuesday in November, as always.
Thank you. I get my dates a little messed up, but you have an opportunity to change what's going on in the Duluth School District. You need to look at all the candidates and find out who's going to do the job for you. And so now that's your responsibility, the viewers of this program. Thanks for coming in today, Art, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.